Measured by market cap, Novo Nordisk is today the biggest pharma company in the world, making it also, measured with the value, the biggest listed company in Europe. And looking at their pipeline, I think, R&D pipeline meaning, the future looks also very, very promising. The foundation is giving philanthropic grants and investments annually worth of 1.2 to 1.3 billion a year, making it most likely one of the biggest grant-giving foundations in the world. So I think this is, all in all, a story worth sharing. Lars has an over 35 years management experience in the pharmaceutical industry. He's twice named the world's best CEO by Harvard Business Review, largely due his open, honest, direct leadership approach, but also due to his impressive business results. On top of talking about business, Lars is often mentioning luck also. And a bit of a surprise for Lars, I know one thing, he didn't know that I know. Lars loves red, fast motorcycles, I have heard. Okay. Nana already mentioned about the moderated discussion, so I'm not going to be saying anything about that. So now, I think, ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the keynote, and Lars Rebien, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Petri. This was a bit of a surprise. So I don't know whether you saw the old video of me on my motorcycle. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Saastamoinen Foundation and Aalto University, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm not a very frequent guest to Finland. Actually, this is only my second visit. I was here in connection with a public project. I was trying to see if we could get the European Medical Agency to Copenhagen. We did not succeed. We came second, but there is no prize for second because we didn't get the agency. So I was not successful, unfortunately. I'm very pleased to be here, and Petri mentioned, let us focus a little bit on optimism. The whole story I'm going to share with you is a story which, at least for now, looks very successful and very promising. It has not been without its failures and mistakes, and I can say personally, I'm probably the one in the company that have made the most mistakes. I usually don't repeat them, but they come in different forms over time. But I think what is the most important thing that we can learn about leadership is to act, take action, and not be fearful of the consequences. And I think one of the reasons why I accepted the invitation was that I really wanted to personally come to Finland and also perhaps stimulate those of you that, like many Danes, tends to have a quite negative view on the world. That the glass is actually half full and not half empty. Finland has a lot to be proud of and a lot of successes. And we are so pleased in our heart that you have joined the Nordic countries in an even more substantive way, because the current political environment that I see it calls for a renewal or even greater Nordic collaboration. We have a common history. We share interests in security, in energy, in science and innovation and in culture and arts and design, and you can go on and on and on. And I'm here to personally just convey my interest in strengthening these relationships if possible. In addition to this, I'm a forester, interestingly enough, by academic training, but I have never worked as such. But I do share the view that the forests are the key to many of the environmental challenges that we are facing. It represents biodiversity, it represents a carbon sink, it represents raw materials going into industry and into products. It provides for human and animal well-being, as well as represents aesthetic beauty. So let me move on. I'm going to skip this next one because it's basically going to tell you what I'm going to tell you. So if you just hang on with me, on to the next one here. So my objective is to share the story of a Danish enterprise that has led to significant advances in biomedical science and created a platform, the Novo Nordisk Foundation, as well as its holding company, Novo Holdings, serving Denmark and increasingly internationally to improve, and we are ambitious here, human health and the planet's health. I started, as was mentioned, perhaps in 1982 with a company. For lack of imagination, being a forester, I was looking for a job. I had a big loan from the bank that financed my studies, and forestry was the type of job you would like to have when you are 55, not when you are 25, 27 years old. So I joined this company that I had no idea of, but they paid well. And that was the most important thing for me. And I've been there ever since. And now I represent the owners of this enterprise, the Novo Nordisk Foundation. So it's been a privilege, because working in this company, and this was not planned at all by myself, it has given content to my life. Working in industrial processes that improve society and environment, but also in human health. And I didn't plan this at all. And here I am standing on the shoulders of all those thousands of people who have created this wealth, and I'm able to hand out this for good purposes for society. The story is a long one. We just celebrated our 100-year anniversary. It was started by this couple on the right side of the screen. August Krogh, Nobel laureate in physiology, and slightly behind him, as it was normal at the time, a woman. She was one of the first medical doctors to be medical doctor in Denmark, Maria Krogh. She's important in this story because she had diabetes. And at that time, diabetes was a death sentence. She kept it very much to herself that she had diabetes. But traveling in America, giving lectures on his scientific work after receiving the Nobel Prize, they became aware of the fact that Toronto University had discovered the structure and the nature of insulin. She convinced August to travel to Toronto, got a license to take the manufacturing process back to Denmark, and that started the company. In the process, he did promise to the inventors at Toronto University to give back part of the profit to society. And this is what we're doing also today. Shortly after establishing the company, the couple went on with their scientific work. They had to recruit some entrepreneurs, and these are the small pictures you see in the middle. A clinician, Hayedorn, and an investor. They needed some money. They had nothing. So they started the company, and they needed some engineers and pharmacists, the two Peterson brothers. What happened was that they actually fell out with each other, and the Peterson brothers left and started their own company manufacturing insulin. So these two companies that were founded within 2 years in Denmark competed with each other ever since until '89. So in a way, I could also give a lecture on the importance of competition. They hated each other. They sued each other. They stole employees from each other, and they competed and competed and competed. But they also, by doing so, improved the therapies for people with diabetes. They improved innovation. They created patents, and they created the company we know of today. And in the process, first Nordisk, but subsequently also Novo created a foundation. I don't know what it meant, what have gone through their minds. Maybe they tried to live up to the promise to Toronto University by putting part of their wealth into this foundation. Or maybe they thought that their children were perhaps not as bright as they thought themselves, and therefore they would probably run the company into the ground, and therefore it was better to incorporate it as a foundation ownership. I don't know what the background is, but it was transformative in the sense that when the two companies merged in '89, the Novo Nordisk Foundation was created, and that's the institution that I represent. Enterprise foundations, and this is from the point of view of society, is a very, very important thing. It is not a new thing, as you can see. There were the first foundations were created in 1850. Then came a very well-known foundation a little bit later on, Carlsberg. And then came the Nordisk Foundation. Then came Maersk. Then came the Novo Foundation. Then came Lundbeck, which is also in the pharmaceutical field, and Leo Pharmaceuticals. And later on, when we merged, we created the Novo Nordisk Foundation. These foundations are all ensuring that the ownership and control of the companies remain in Denmark. If it hadn't been for this structure, we would not have had a pharmaceutical industry in Denmark. It would have been a situation like the Swedish pharmaceutical industry, which was incorporated into international companies. The research were later on dismantled. And so the Swedish life science industry is rebuilding based on the loss of very substantial pharmaceutical and life science companies in the past. Headquarters are important because headquarters are where the institutions make their decisions. It requires competences, it attracts international talent, and it raises the level of understanding for international business in the country much more so than we would otherwise have had. The articles of associations for these enterprise foundations obliges them on the one hand to control the companies and on the other hand to give grants to charitable objectives. This is also why, as you'll see in a minute, that we have separated our activities into a foundation and a holding company, as these two objectives are very, very different objectives. At the foundation level, we employ professors, academics, people with understanding of society and education, whereas in the holding company, we mostly employ business people and financial people to ensure that we make the right investment. So, what is the purpose of the Novo Nordisk Foundation? We're not going to go through this in great details. You can go into the website and familiarize yourself with it. But it's a very, very broad definition. And you can see up here on the right side the three main purposes: to support physiological, endocrinological, and metabolic and other medical researchers, to support a research hospital, and to support other scientific as well as humanitarian and social purposes, in addition to controlling the operating company. This is very broad. And so the role we have today as stewards of this wealth is to define how this is relevant for society today. So interestingly enough for me, while I was CEO for the company, I didn't pay any attention to what happened in Denmark politically. Zero. 0.5% of my sales was in Denmark. I could close the Danish affiliate without sending out a stock release. All my business, all my focus, all my activities were outside of Denmark. When I got my job in the foundation, it was totally reversed. I had to pay attention to what is relevant for Denmark, what's relevant on a global scale, to define where a foundation like ours could make sensible contributions. So a little bit about the structure. So here you see on the top the Novo Nordisk Foundation. You see below it 100% owned Novo Holdings company, which is the investment company. And then you see below that, exampled here, Novo Nordisk and the new industrial company called Novo Nordisk. And so money flows from the operating companies up to the holding company in the form of dividends. The holding company, where I'm also the chairman, reinvests these dividends and give in form of dividend to the foundation, whatever the foundation feels that they would like to donate in the coming year. So we are not accumulating money at the foundation level, we are accumulating money at the holdings level. In the operating companies, and this is an interesting challenge, which I hope we can discuss as we get further into the program today, how do you manage and exert your ownership? We actually, because I can disclose and there will be some numbers, we have 28% of the equity at Novo Nordisk, but more than 70% of the votes of the general shareholders meeting. This means, and you shouldn't tell anybody, that I actually decide what happens to the company. But the fact is, I don't really know what's good for the company. That is why we have a board of directors. And this board of directors are selected to suit the needs and the challenges of the company. And therefore, we elect only 2 members to the board of directors, the vice chairman and 1 additional member. All the other board members are independent members. We want to operate the company as any other stock-listed company, because otherwise the employees don't want to work there, the shareholders don't want to invest their money there. They want to see a competitive company that performs based on the same metrics as everybody else. But the only one thing which they can't do, they can't sell the company. Because we are not obliged to sell the A shares that we hold. So forever and after, the company will belong to the foundation. Unless we went into a very, very catastrophic situation where employment would be deteriorating, the company's existence from a financial perspective was not secured, then we might be able to deviate from this. But this would require approval from the public administration to do so. And I've tried a few times to merge the company into another company because I thought it was a great idea. The board of the foundation didn't agree with me. They say it's not necessary. So I said, yeah, but I mean, if we want to be competitive, if we want to grow, and if we want to do it fast, let's merge with this company. No. Only necessity if the company is in deep trouble. And thank God we have not been. With the Novo Nordisk company, which is the industrial company, we have a slightly lower equity part. We have 24% because we just merged it with another Danish company in the same field. And the 170 companies are companies that we have invested in from the holding company, and we have ownership of anywhere from 100% holding company control to less than 10%. Little bit about the figures, and I think we shouldn't dwell too much with it, but I mean, since I have the opportunity, for 2023, we believe when we calculate the impact that we have funded approximately 10,000 academic positions at universities. This is not only in Denmark. These are also projects that are located as collaboration between Danish and international universities. 750 grants have been awarded, so you can imagine with a success rate of applications of somewhere less than 20%, it's a lot of applications. And the board is responsible for approving everything. So we started out with having board material of 700 pages until we found a different way of organizing it, which delegated some powers to the scientific committees, but it's a very, very comprehensive work. 9.1 billion Danish kroner, or 1.2 billion, was awarded in donations in 2023. We had a investment return from our own investment activities of 12.6 billion in 23, and we received income from the dividends of Novo Nordisk and Novo of 19 billion. So we had a positive inflow of more than 30 billion. And as we had outflows of donation of 9, you can tell that we are consolidating ourselves. I can mention in this context that I did research, or I was given research about our relationship to Finland. And from 19 to 23, we had awarded 67 million euros to Finnish academics based on applications to our programs, mostly open call programs. Interestingly, when you donate money, you have to figure out how to do it. And I usually say jokingly, and this is with tongue in cheek, that it's more difficult to hand out money responsibly than to make it. It's a little bit of an exaggeration because I'm giving out the money. But when you look at it this way, you can divide our activities into either open competition or philanthropic investments or strategic or mission-driven activities. If you ask the scientists, where do you get most productivity on your donations? Where do you get most innovation, most articles in peer-reviewed journals and most citation? It's open calls. So why on earth are you only placing a third of your money in that and 2/3 of your money in strategic and mission-driven? It is because we would like to make a societal difference in Denmark and in Scandinavia by focusing on areas where we think we have a long-term competitive position. So we have an obligation to also create an ecosystem of investments in small companies and innovation, whereby the companies can benefit from recruiting in an environment of more knowledge, as opposed to just creating innovation. Innovation is good, but of course, we don't really know whether that innovation leads to enterprises. It's just new knowledge. Innovation is commercialization of new knowledge. So, and you can also see on the work up here that almost 80% of the work goes into the open calls, because that's a huge number of applications, whereas the strategic and mission-driven applications are very, very, very large. If you look at it in comparison to the Danish society, we support all Danish research with approximately 15%, and it's been growing a little bit. And don't, again, repeat it in Denmark. I think we've come to the limit of what we can do, because we're almost exerting a political influence without having a political mandate. So it is becoming a bit of a problem that we have become so large. So since things are going extremely well, it's my ambition to donate more funds at, for instance, international universities, while not having to reduce it in Denmark, so we can keep it at this level, so nobody is crying, things are good, and the added value creation will go to international collaborations. We are not always in agreement about this. I'm more internationalistic than my management of the foundation. They all like to be friends with the Danish professors and the ministers, so they tend to favor investing all the money in Denmark. But I'm the one that has to sort out all the political problems when the politicians get hungry. for financing and wants to have co-influence in how I donate the money. So we're having a little bit of interesting discussion as it relates to that. You can see here that our background was in medical and health, and agriculture has gone up. It's probably more because there's so little research done in agriculture. But that needs to increase. So we can say that we will most likely increase in the future in technical sciences, in natural sciences, in agriculture, and I think also humanities. It's not in our articles other than supporting art. I think we need to support the human sciences in terms of ensuring that we get public acceptance of innovation. Because we are in a situation where big parts of the public are not accepting new innovation for fear of whatever they are reading in social media. And so we have an obligation to ensure the better environment for innovations. If we look at the distribution of assets, and this is just to describe how we are allocating our funds, about 100, this is end of 2023, 150 billion euros of assets, and you can see 111 billion of those are statutory ownership in Novo Nordisk and Novo Holdings that we cannot relinquish. So they're just basically sitting there giving return. Then in order for us to be able to support the strategy of the companies, we are holding a chest of 10% of that value so that we can co-invest should the company need to expand capital. Then we have 3 billion set aside because we have given donations that have not been paid out yet. And that means that we are remaining 24 billion euros, of which we can invest. And of that, we are committing to donate 3 to 5% every year. On a good year, we should be able to do more than 3 to 5%, so we would be able to consolidate over time to ensure that we can live up to a larger and larger company. And this is, the next slide just shows what management believes that they will increase the donations to in the next years. And this is not a recommendation to go out and buy Novo Nordisk stock or anything like this. I should have said this in the introduction. This is a projection of what they expect we will get of incoming funds, both from our own investment and from Novo Nordisk, enabling us to at least double. And I can say that in the most optimistic cases, it's far more than this. Because the company is doing extraordinarily well. But this is, again, not a recommendation to buy equity at Novo Nordisk. So let's just talk a little bit about the strategy of the foundation. These are the headlights in health, in life science ecosystem, and sustainability. And let's not go into the details. Again, here you can at leisure look at it, and the presentation, we can hand out the presentation if anybody wants it. They are very, very ambitious, and they are very broad. And as an interesting thing is, if you note that infectious disease has been included in the health section. And 5 years ago, 6 years ago, there were no mentioning of infectious disease. But of course, what happened? COVID came, and we realized that our society was extraordinarily ill-prepared to deal with this epidemic. No diagnosis, no equipment, no plans, no nothing. So we had to step in. The company itself developed a diagnosis for COVID-19, and they set their labs aside to test all the hospital staff initially. We gave funds to multiply this to create centers for the public, which was initially kickstarted by us in the foundation. And here, just an example of how gratifying it is to work in an organization like this. I could call the Prime Minister and say, you have a problem. You don't know what's happening. We can help you. It was an enormous moment of pride on the part of the company and on the foundation that we could help our countrymen in this particular situation. But again, very, very broad and very, very ambitious from having given basically money to diabetes research for many, many years, just because of our financial capabilities. The holding company, just a few things. It's one of the foundation is one of the largest. It is, I can, in this small audience, say it is the largest by far. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is probably 60 billion euros or something like this. And we are, as we mentioned, 150, so there's a big difference. We are the holding company is the controlling shareholder in the two companies that I've mentioned, and we are obliged by statute to focus on long-term profitability. There's a lot of talk, or has been a lot of talk, about stakeholder capitalism. And I was thinking, how do I define stakeholder capitalism? It was very fashionable some years ago, and I was scratching my head to think, what is meaningful for me? Stakeholder capitalism, because how do you weigh environmental issues versus social issues versus creating a profit for the shareholders? The way I interpret it is, it's the same old, same old. The business of business is business, but viewed in a long time perspective. And in a long time perspective, social issues and environmental issues become framework issues for a company. And so all we have to do is ensure that we act in a way which allows us to create value long term. And not because we have quarterly earnings releases, but long term. So that made it easy for me to understand. Let me go on, and there are a few numbers from the holding company here. There are about 180 people. This was at the end of the year. I've already mentioned 170 companies. The investment portfolio of about 30 billion. They made a little bit less return than the companies where we have the majority ownership, as you can see. But a very, very good year last year, 4.6 billion in investment return. And you shouldn't measure this by quarters or by years, actually. So therefore, they usually point to the fact that they've returned 10% on average in the last 5 years. That's only when they have a relatively bad year, they talk about the 5-year performance. And when they have a very, very good year, they talk about the short-term performance. So there's no difference there. They're really financial people that want to maximize return, and this is what they're employed for. This is the structure and how we invest. We have two group companies where we basically do nothing. We have the shares and we get the dividends. We influence the board by appointing board members. I have regular meetings with the chairman discussing the progress of the company. If there's any issues that would have to come up on a general shareholders meeting so that we are in agreement. Otherwise, it's a delicate matter for him and also for me. Also, identification of new competencies required, which requires us to find new board members. If management needs to be refreshed, then we also discuss that. And then in the investment portfolio, we divided 50-50 into life science investments and 50% into capital investments, which are basically broader hedges of the life science risks that we have. So, in conclusion, my take is enterprise foundations can develop into having a significant role in society. For Denmark, that is the case at the moment. So much so that even the government, when they make financial reports, starts to mention the company's impact, which has never happened before. It also has the potential to significantly influence academic and educational activities. And recently we were able to make a commitment to participate in the greatest nature restoration project ever undertaken in Denmark, where we will be acquiring land expensively from farmers, you know. They're watching their land. Because we have the baroque situation compared to Finland, that we have too much farmland and too little forests, whereas Finland has too much forest and too little farmland. So we are buying very, very expensive farmland and turning it into forest. And in doing so, hope to be able to improve biodiversity, the ecosystem, and all the good things that you can think of. So in order to do this, we have to stay relevant and live up to the founder's deed. That's the only thing that can get me really in trouble if I don't live up to the Articles of Association of the foundation. Then the government, the Queen, or the King we have now, will come after me, and then I can get in really serious trouble. Otherwise, I don't have a boss, except my wife, of course. But how do we then, this is a delicate thing, how do we ensure legitimacy here? We are influencing Danish society in a very big way, but there's no political influence. And I can tell you, Danish politicians are drooling by the thought that they could participate in how we use our money. So we have to avoid that at all costs. The only way to do that is to be transparent. In the past, foundations lived a quiet life, quiet, good life. But now we have to be transparent about everything we do, why we do it, who does it, so that we avoid potential political influence. Internationalization is a topic I hope we can discuss at the end. But my key takeaway is it is capitalism with a very long societal impact. Thank you very much.